Welcome, this is Pam. Today is part 2, parasite Q&A. We had so many questions come in last week that I answered as many as I could in our time together, and we went way over time. Today I'm going to make it a little shorter, but I'm going to continue to answer your questions about how to effectively treat and recover from parasites. And I'm going to answer any questions that you have to the best of my ability. And what I mean by that is basically I just want to make sure that you understand that what I'm sharing with you is for educational purposes. It is not intended to replace the necessary measures of your healthcare provider. If we haven't met, my name is Pam Bartha, and I'm the author of Become a Wellness Champion and the founder of Live Disease Free. You might be wondering, how can you talk about this topic, Pam? You're not a doctor, you're not a healthcare professional, and that's true, I'm not. I'm an educator. I'm a health educator, a coach. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis over 35 years ago. By the grace of God, I learned early on that what I was dealing with is infection, chronic infections in the body. Over the years, we've learned a lot about the types of parasites that are plaguing us when we have chronic diseases. I went on to get a science degree, became a high school math and science teacher. But on weekends and evenings, I was coaching people, helping them to recover like I did. Since then, I left my teaching profession and I went into full-time coaching, and I've done that for over 20 years now. And we have developed a system, a plan that helps people to treat really chronic infections, chronic parasitic infestations. And there are many wonderful successes that you can hear from our students. And I'm going to share just a few today, just before we get started. But if you want to hear from their voices, you want to hear their successes, take some Kleenex and go to our YouTube channel, Live Disease Free, and you will hear the amazing, miraculous recoveries that people are having when they're following the Live Disease Free plan, and they are treating the cause of their disease. They're treating parasitic infections, chronic parasitic infections that unfortunately our standard of care is not equipped at this time to identify or to treat properly. I just wanted to share a few successes. We always have our live Q&A call for my students, and I call them students again because I'm not a healthcare professional, but we have that on Tuesday nights. So these are just a few successes that came in from past students, but also from students that are in the program right now. So I got an amazing update from a mom of a son who, his name is Dante, and she said it's fine for us to share this information, but basically her son was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and he was very, very sick. And his mom, Diane, supported him through this journey. And I got an update from her just before the weekend. I saw an email with a picture of Dante and his new bride. He just got married. This is the little message that she sent me in the email. Hi, Pam. I thought I would share this photo with you. Dante was married on the weekend. He feels great. He still has one more round of treatment, of parasite treatment to do, which he'll complete that when he returns from his honeymoon. Once again, thank you for all your help. You saved his life. I can't thank you enough. So I didn't save his life. I gave them a step-by-step plan that they could use to work with appropriate practitioners to treat effectively. And that's the dilemma that we're dealing with right now, is that a lot of the practitioners, they believe that we do have parasites. They don't understand how infested we are. They don't realize that the herbs, the antiparasitic herbs that we have, are not effective enough on their own. And so they're prescribing herbs, or they might, like one lady I was speaking with today, she joined our program just a few days ago, and her doctor put her on, it's called mebendazole. And that is a parasite drug to treat roundworms. And it's like half the dose that is recommended for like 3 days on. And that part is not the worst, like to do, a few days on and a few days off. It's not super effective, but he's prescribing half the dose. So that's the problem, is that if you don't use the right treatments, you don't use the right doses, it doesn't really work. And then you think, well, that wasn't my problem. I didn't have parasites. And yeah, you did have parasites. Another person that I'm working with right now, like the doctor's like, oh, well, I gave you 3 days of praziquantel and I don't pick up those parasites anymore. So now let's treat Lyme and give you liposomal herbs for that, which is great. But she still feels terrible. There's no way, like with what I've seen, that she's passing that 3 days of one praziquantel dose, like, or even 10 days of it. It does not get rid of them all out of your body. It doesn't. And so I just got another message from her sharing pictures of what she's passing when she did the enema again. So this is what I'm really trying to help you to see, is that these, like the bigger worms, will cause so much more symptoms in us than Borrelia, which causes Lyme disease, than Candida or mold or yeast. Yes, they all need to be treated. Yes, they can affect us. But back when I was first diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a lot of the doctors thought everything was Candida, 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 Candida. And yeah, Candida can be overgrown. And yes, it needs to be knocked back. We don't sterilize our body from it, but we can knock it back. But it's not like, if you have a lot of large worms, the Candida is not really causing a lot of the symptoms. And so that's why it's so important to have like strategy and experience when you're working with somebody that's going to help you recover. And yes, it's great to work with the practitioners, but you need to guide and direct them in a respectful manner so that you are treating effectively. That is the key. So that's what Dante did. By the help of his mother, I think his mom actually found me and supported her son through the journey. And you can just imagine a mom so proud. Her son has his life back. He's starting a new life with his new wife. They can start a family. He can work. He can support his wife. They can be partners in life together. And this is what should happen in the early stages. When we realize we have parasites, we should be able to go to our practitioner and we should be able to treat effectively. The next student I wanted to share, and I have her permission to share also, you can find her success. Her name is Tracy, and you can find that on livediseasefree.com. She is a retired dentist. She lives in the United States. And when she met me 1 year ago, like just over a year ago, I think it was like in May that she was in the program, she was bedridden for years. She had so many different conditions, so much inflammation. There's a doctor that gave her braces for her hands also, because she had like extreme pain and arthritis type inflammation in her hands, used a walker when she could walk. So like she said, my husband had to do everything. Just listen to her story. She's so incredibly inspiring. And because she's a healthcare professional, like a dentist, when she learned this plan, and she really went to work and she treated aggressively, and she shared that she passed like a jar full of worms, and it was really shocking to her and her husband. It gave her life back. She could then, after she treated, she was out of bed. She's exercising, as I'll share the little update she gave me. She's continuing to learn. She's continuing to research. She started to babysit grandchildren that she was never able to babysit before. She can cook for her family again. She can have family get-togethers. And that's what, like myself too, I love it when our family gets together and we get to cook a good meal for them, to take care of our home. Like all of that is so important, instead of laying in bed and suffering with extreme pain, which a lot of the pain medications don't help that much anyhow. So she just shared the little update. So she shared some research with me, and she also shared, I really appreciate, so she still, because she was one of my students, she still has access to our replays. Like she finished the program, but there's still replays every week because we're still working with new students. I continue to learn. And I share that with my students. I love them. And some of the students, we're going to have huge celebrations next year when it's our 10th anniversary, that some of our students have been living MS-free for 9-10 years by now already, which is so exciting. She shared, I appreciate your Tuesday lectures so much. I'm starting to exercise with a coach. Started that a few months ago. She's still following the diet strictly. She's been traveling. She's still retired, but just loving her family time. And she still has a little bit of pain, but she's active and working out. And that just means she has a little bit more work to do, a little bit more treating to do. So when we become that infested, and we know like we're passing hundreds of worms, and we know that they can lay 200,000 eggs in a day, it does take a little bit of time. But she is feeling so much better, and she's out of bed, and she actually moved. Like, she just finished the program and they had to move. And you know what moving is like, it's a lot of work. So thrilled for her. It's nice to get these updates. And then just one other student, I didn't want to share his name, but he took my program in 2017. I'm not on Facebook very often, but I was going through it for some reason. And I saw a beautiful picture of him and his wife, and another picture of him and his whole family in nature. He's doing great, just like looks like a normal, healthy person. And it's just warms my heart when I see these past students that I don't necessarily stay in contact with, and you wonder how they're doing. And I see that, and that's why I do this work. And that is, of course, when you get your health and your life back, you want to help others do the same. So now just a couple of students that shared in our Q&A call last night. And I just wanted to share because like I'm not going to say their names because they're just in the program right now, but what they're sharing is really amazing. So there was a part 1 Q&A that I did last week, and I shared some successes that came in last week, and these ones are just a couple that came in this week. There are more, but I want to get to your Q&As because we're not going to go as long today as we did. So this student shared, well, first let me backtrack. He doesn't have multiple sclerosis. He came to me as a young man, middle-aged man, I think younger, in 20s, I think 30s, 20s. Sorry, I don't know his exact age, but he was starting to get really scary neurological symptoms. And so he started to feel like, I need to figure out what's going on, like especially in his head, a lot of head, like inflammation in his head, sensations, scary neurological sensations in his head. And so he went to some different like integrative practitioners, and he interviewed them, and he was like, okay, what are you going to do for me? What do you think is going on with me? And so they all said what they were going to do. And then he found myself and our program. And so then he interviewed me also. I interviewed him. And so he went with us because we have a very step-by-step plan. We are getting down to the root cause of the neurological symptoms. So yes, we do need to do heavy metal detoxes, and yes, we need to, clean up our diet, but really the symptoms are caused mainly by different types of parasites. Our microbiome is out of balance, and they have often moved into the central nervous system. So with his student, like he's been treating over multiple cycles, and he has a lot of flukes. We don't know if they are liver flukes or intestinal flukes. They're probably intestinal flukes. They're quite long, some of them. So flukes are flatworms, and they're wider, and they're flat, but they could be like maybe up to at least a centimeter wide or wider. And they could be, 1 inch up to 4 to 5 inches. They're not like long spaghetti noodles. That would be more of a roundworm. And flukes are incredibly pro-inflammatory. That's what I'm seeing in my students. I didn't know flukes were such a big issue, but they are. And I have personally passed a lot of flukes also. And I believe for me, it's probably intestinal flukes. But so he's been passing a lot of them. And like sometimes with my students, when you're starting to really treat effectively, you start to feel like, oh my gosh, like I can't remember feeling this good. And then when you start looking back on your life, you're like, man, I've been dealing with this for decades. And that's what he's starting to see. And he's like, I can't believe how relaxed I'm feeling. Like the anxiety is going away. The up and down moods, like especially the feeling depressed goes away. Being able to just socialize more and just being comfortable, and just like, it's insane how they affect our brain also. Like, it's just crazy. So I just wanted to share. He said, I'm steadily improving. I really feel like I'm getting to the bottom of something that's been affecting me for decades. My mood continues to improve. I feel like myself much more. It's so crazy when you say that, but it's so true. And I felt like that too. It's like, oh my gosh, like I feel strong. I feel grounded. I feel solid. I feel clear mind. I feel Like I can just walk up the hill, I've got energy, and it can be just from passing, a number of different parasitic worms. Like, yes, we're passing the small parasites, we're treating the bacteria and the protozoa, but those big worms, they really, really impact our mood, our cognitive function, our strength. It's crazy. So he says, I feel so much more connected to my body and I'm so much more relaxed. Amazing. So I'm so happy for him. He still is passing flukes and other worms too, but mostly flukes. And again, they are incredibly pro-inflammatory. I suspect they are more pro-inflammatory than the roundworms, but the verdict is out on that. I'll keep you posted. Like, we've worked with hundreds of students all over the world. I have thousands of pictures of worms. This next student is newer. She's been following the diet and recovering from MS, and she's started, so once they go through the prep phase, and I'm not going to talk about the steps we take, I did that last week, so that'll save some time today. So go back to part 1 Q&A with Pam Bartha if you want to listen to the steps, or you can just listen to my masterclass training because I go into detail with the steps there. So she followed the Live Disease-Free diet. It's on our website in the main page on our website, livediseasefree.com. Under research, you'll find the Live Disease-Free diet guidelines. So she's in our program though, but she's getting more personalized support from me where I'm really checking her work. So following the diet, supporting the body, daily bowel movements and sleeping. Then she started to incorporate raw garlic. And what we do is we chop it up on a spoon and we have it on a spoon, chopped up. We don't chop it up on a spoon. We chop it up and then put it on a spoon. We start eating our meal and then we put the garlic in our mouth and swish it down with water, and then we will finish eating our meal. So the raw garlic is kind of in the middle of our meal. It's not at the top of our stomach or the bottom. It's not burning our stomach because it's hot, and it's incredibly helpful. But I'm not telling you should do that. Garlic is a very strong blood thinner. So if you're you're on blood thinners, please talk to your doctor about it. But when students are ready to treat, when they're feeling a lot better, their carbs are down, they're sleeping well, they're having daily bowel movements, then they can start bringing in herbs and they can start using oxygen therapies and they can start. And it is shocking how helpful just diet and things like the chopped garlic and this oxidizing agent, which I can't talk about the name. We're not allowed to talk about it on this platform. So you can find on my website or on Rumble where I talk about using oxygen therapies in treating parasites, and I can talk about it there. So just those 3 things, and she's started to use a blend of herbs for treating candida, but a lot of those herbs are antibacterial too. They could potentially be discouraging to certain protozoa also. And she has noticed already, she said, I have more strength. I can get up faster from the sitting position. She's able to write again throughout the day. And this is another thing, like some people, they can't write anymore. They can't use their hands. I shared last week, one of our students who's very new, she couldn't use her left hand, and literally within I think it's 9 days of following the diet and doing several oxygen enemas that she is actually able to use her left hand again, and she can actually use the clutch on her Harley Davidson bike. And she's so happy because she thought she had to get rid of her bike. So, but anyhow, with this student, she has more strength. She can get up faster from sitting. She can write throughout the day. She said, my knee, ankle, and big toe are now more involved in my walking and my mobility. I'm no longer dragging my leg, but walking. And my balance is improving too. I can stand longer without the walker, and I can get dressed and undressed while standing. And I'm going to start the oxygen therapy, like the oxidizing agent that we do. She hasn't even started that yet. She hasn't even done the enemas yet. And so just with diet and the right herbs. And so this is where like some of us you might be listening to this and thinking, well, if I get parasite herbs, is that going to be the most helpful for me? So the wormwood and the black walnut and the cloves is usually in a formula that you can find in health food stores or online. And we haven't found those to be the most helpful. You might pass some worms, but we haven't found those to be the most helpful. I'll talk more about that as we go through the questions. So go ahead and type your questions in the question box for me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer your questions, time permitting. We will answer them later anyhow. But just type your questions in, and I'm going to go through a few that came in, but I'll go to your questions also. So a couple that came in just before the call here. I was going to use natural remedies like black walnut, wormwood, and cloves, but I'm wondering about the parasite drugs. How does it affect the gut microbiome? So it's true that when we use oxygen therapies, or like ozone, and there's other oxygen therapies that I can't talk about here, or if we use even the antimicrobial herbs or the parasite drugs, they can impact our health promoting microbes. For sure they can. But the problem is that if we don't treat them, they take our life away. So we have to treat them. We definitely are using cycles, so they're definitely not going to be as detrimental to us as like an antibiotic. Like if you use a medication that's an antibiotic to treat Lyme disease over multiple weeks, months, or even for acne, etc., that is going to be a direct target on your health promoting good bacteria. So, but what we do in the program is we're constantly rebuilding the good. We really like raw sauerkraut. Just start with small amounts, especially if it's homemade, or it's called a wild ferment, where you're allowing diversity. So you're allowing many different types of microbes that are living on the cabbage to multiply. So you're introducing many different types of species of health promoting microbes that we don't even know what they are, but they really, really help to keep parasites under control. So, and for the rest of our life, we should be replenishing health promoting microbes. Really important. So they can impact some of our health promoting microbes. They can, but we're not in good shape when we're starting this. How about, another question, I have been doing a mold and metal detox for over a year with a naturopath doctor. And it seems like I'm also doing a parasite cleanse at the same time. Maybe I'm overloading my system with releasing toxins and infection. So I am very eager to start cleansing with the parasite, Yes, I am very eager to start cleansing the parasitic infection and just trying to gauge the best approach in timing. So number one, if you have been detoxing mold for a year, you're not on the right path. Like, you should not need to, if you have a lot of larger worms, and fungus loves to live in a garbage environment. It is the recycler of the world. So when we have a lot of larger worms, they deposit their waste in us. They deposit their old dead bacteria that live in them. They have their own parasites, and they deposit that in us and their waste material. And fungus loves that environment. So if you're trying to clean up fungus, it's not going to go away until you also change the train. You decrease enough of those larger parasites and all of the nasty pathogenic bacteria, et cetera, and protozoa, and then treating fungus is going to be productive. If you live in a moldy environment, yes, it's important to get out of the moldy environment. It's important to use binders to help to detox the mycotoxins that you are exposed to. They really do suppress immune function. But treating candida or molds, it really is about, number one, changing your diet. Number two, changing the train. And we treat from big to small. So the bigger worms are much larger than fungi. You can't see fungus. I mean, you can see the colonies of fungus with, like, if it's growing on something, but the actual fungi itself, you cannot see the little cells or the hypha unless you use a microscope. So you can imagine large worms are going to be causing a lot more damage in your body, and they produce a lot of waste. So we treat large to small. We treat the large worms and protozoa for about 14 days, sometimes 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, depending on, like if somebody's really improving a lot, then a practitioner might say, let's go for 3 weeks, right? And then we treat fungus, because fungus seems to be more active as you're killing off the bad, bigger worms. But very important that you're having daily bowel movements, so you're releasing everything all the time. Very important. Otherwise, you're building up they do carry a lot of heavy metals. They also carry their own parasites. So you want to be flushing that out every day. You want to be having daily bowel movements. So important that you are treating from big to small. So again, the bigger parasites, the worms, protozoa, then fungi, and then we take a break week. And during the break week, we still use herbs, we still use oxygen therapies, but then we circle around, and that was one cycle, and you do multiple cycles from big to small, big to small. If you just focus on Lyme or you focus on mold or candida, you'll never clear it, because fungus is going to continue to thrive in that environment. And Lyme, we will continue to be infected with Borrelia and other microbes from those bigger worms. They do carry Borrelia, and that's been shown by Dr. Alan McDonald I've done that in his lecture. So you can actually see that in my masterclass training. I shared his research. So, and this is the reason I'm doing these Q&As is this is not an easy process. It does take work. It takes diligence. It takes persistence. It takes troubleshooting, right? And it will only not work if you give up, if you don't continue and you don't treat effectively. And that is the reason why it's so important to get support and to never give up. Because if you don't give up and if you're really diligent, then you will succeed. It's not magic. It's like your microbiome is out of balance. And again, your digestive tract is about the surface area of a double tennis court. Just think about how big that is. And we're trying to change the terrain of that. And that's why it does take time and work. And you have to be up for the challenge. It's worth it. It's not worth living with chronic disease, that's for sure. So if somebody had like blazing mold or fungus symptoms and you do a couple of cycles to knock it back a bit, that's fine. But to do that for a whole year and even a metal detox, then number one, when you're doing, depending on if you're doing chelation, you're going to be possibly, unless a practitioner is very careful, you could be depleting yourself of minerals also. So if you're doing that for a whole year, you could be more depleted in minerals. So we don't do that. We don't treat metals for a whole year. Like even some of the hero doctors that I follow, like within 6 weeks, you can decrease your heavy metal load using a certain way of doing it. And I don't want to prescribe here, but it should not take a year. With that same doctor, I started doing high dose vitamin D protocol. And so there is a protocol that's recommended by, I think he's a neurologist. And the problem with this is that when you take high doses of vitamin D, it acts as a steroid. So it's not treating the cause. It could potentially help to decrease inflammation a little bit because steroids do that, right? But is that what you want? Or do you want to treat the cause? Do you want health, or do you want to live with the disease, and do you want to manage the disease, right? And if you want health, then you have to treat the cause. You have to treat what is causing you to have the neurological symptoms, and it's not your immune system, it is infections. And we've shown so much research. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, probably 3 weeks ago, I did a live event and a blog post on livediseasefree.com. It's all posted there. MS is a parasitic infestation. I shared a ton of evidence that MS is caused by parasites. And this is true for every neurodegenerative disease. This is true for autoimmune diseases. This is true for cancer. I've done talks about how the parasite drugs treat cancer. And so when you start going deep into the research, it's going to make you frustrated that, like, why are the experts not interested in that research? Because there's no money in treating parasites, unfortunately. So I personally do not recommend, I personally don't feel that a high dose of vitamin D is good for us, is safe for us long-term. I haven't seen anybody where there are long-term benefits from it, maybe short-term possible, decreased inflammation, just like a steroid would do. But do we want to live on like steroids? No. So she said, but after listening to my training, she said that treating the infection is top priority. Absolutely. Okay, I've got a ton more. Okay, I'll just do one more here and then I'm going to go to other questions. So how do worms get into our body? That is just so ridiculous that we don't even know that, because number one, worms and protozoa and fungi and bacteria are in every single country around the world. Yes, if you're chlorinating your water, you're probably not going to get a lot of parasites through your water. But sometimes our chlorinators don't work and we don't even know it, and we can be drinking somewhat raw water, and it's happened even in our hometown, to the point where, like in one area where my mom and dad were living, they just would boil their water because they didn't trust the chlorinator. So these parasites are living in fresh water, they are living in lakes, they are living, so even when we're swimming, swimmer's itch, maybe you've heard of that before, that would be flukes, blood flukes that are in the water, and they can actually burrow into our skin. You could be walking barefoot on some soil where there is, I think it's the hookworm, and it can actually come in through your heel. If you have dogs or cats or any animals in your life, they are going to have worms. If your spouse has parasites or your partner has parasites, you can get them from partners, spouses, eating in restaurants, on your produce that you buy from the grocery store. If you like gardening, parasites are part of life. I say that they're kind of like weeds in a garden. You can weed your garden, you can manage the weeds, but you're never going to have a completely weedless garden where you never have to pick weeds again. They're going to come back. And that is exactly what parasites are like inside of us. There's this constant battle, and that's why we need an immune system. That is why I believe God gave us an immune system, is to protect us, to defend us from these different types of microbes that live in us and causes harm. And that's what parasites are. They live in you and they cause harm to you. They can be big and they can be small. So that's why we don't want to suppress our immune system. We do not want to use immunosuppressive drugs, because then we are more susceptible to other parasites that we could be ingesting, that we could be drinking, that we could be inhaling from the air. So they're all around us. So like, mold spores can be in the air. It's just part of living in this world that we're living in. So that's why we want a strong, healthy immune system. We want to balance our microbiome the best we can, decrease all the disease-causing parasites, increase the health-promoting microbes, and eat right, have lots of nutrition, be active. That's the piece that's missing, though. People know to be active and eat right, but they don't know that they're dealing with a lot of parasites, and that especially the big parasitic worms, that I talk about them a lot because they're bigger, they cause more symptoms in our body. Handles, so this was me years ago, many, many years ago, when I would go into a public bathroom, I wipe the toilet seat dry, I flush the toilet, and I make sure to put toilet paper on the toilet seats. Whenever I'm grabbing handles in the bathrooms, I would use toilet paper, or going out of the bathroom, I would grab a piece of either toilet paper or the paper towels, and I would hold the handle. And what I've noticed in the last few years is that they put in garbage cans by the doors, because a lot of other people are doing that too. So you can pick up parasites from the handles in public bathrooms, from holding shopping carts too. And like, bleach is not going to kill all eggs. Like, some of the eggs are pretty hardy. So this is where I can't again talk about the name, but if you look at the video of oxygen therapies and treating parasites, that oxygen therapy definitely, at the right concentration, it definitely can kill larvae, adults, and eggs of these different types of worms. And also mold, like mold and fungi can be really difficult to treat also, or to even clear off of surfaces. So what parasites can live in the gallbladder and cause polyps, and how would they be treated? So you can do actually searches, and when I do searches, like for science, you could say, what parasites will live in the gallbladder and cause polyps, and then do PDF behind it. At the top of your search, you'll probably see AI, and AI is not always accurate. Very often, like, you have to check it, because sometimes it's like, oh, well, actually, it's not like that. So don't trust AI. It's not 100% accurate. But if you're looking at, if you put PDF behind your search, you will see studies, peer-reviewed studies. So these are studies done by researchers, and then their studies have to go and get scrutinized by other researchers. So that would be more reputable. And so when I did a quick search for that, it would be, one thing that I found is schistosomiasis. So the blood fluke can definitely infect the gallbladder and can cause polyps in that area. So a lot of times, like, cysts can be formed where your body is containing certain parasites, and polyps might be the same thing, but they're definitely related. Could be other parasites too, but they are definitely related to gallbladder polyps. Research has shown that. So a treatment for that is, working with your practitioner, is praziquantel. But you just have to make sure, and then I don't believe that praziquantel on its own is going to be enough. It's a combination of drugs that works better for treating all the parasitic worms. And what would you recommend to combat parasitic worms or other parasites? Number one is preparing to treat. So this is where you decrease your carbs significantly to the point where you feel a lot better. That is decreasing food to the parasites. That way you're going to tolerate the parasites a lot better. Number two is layering therapies. So this is where we use herbs and parasite drugs and oxygen therapies all together in specific, like, as far as the parasite drugs, like multiple parasite drugs, like our students usually test well for 3 to 5 parasite drugs, and then rebuilding your good microbes. So as you're going through treatment cycles and you're feeling better and better, liver gallbladder flushes are important too, because sometimes the parasites are hiding in the liver gallbladder meridian. Also heavy metal detox. The parasites are a sink for heavy metal. So they absorb a lot of heavy metals. They carry a lot of heavy metals. So when we release them, we want to release them quickly. And then the volume is too low. Let me just check. I will try talking a little louder. I'll check the volume on here. All right. Let's see here. And then treating and then rebuilding the good microbes is really important, right? Rebuilding that natural defense. If you have been on antibiotics, your natural defense is compromised. And so the parasites have a lot more area that they can take hold and reproduce. And there are a lot of health promoting microbes that produce substances that discourage the bad parasites from being able to live inside of us, especially bad bacteria, parasitic bacteria, or fungi, protozoa, etc. So that's why it's really important to, as we're treating the bad, to make sure that we are replenishing the good, and we do that for the rest of our life. We're living in a time right now where we have these toxins in our environment that we did not know about, that we did not have maybe 60, 70 years ago. I'm not going to say names because my last week's video, all the comments got deleted, so we have to be careful what we say. But just, if you follow my work, there's things that are put in the air that definitely affect our health. There's things in the water. The technologies we're using can really impact our health too. So all of these things, we have to really manage them. Like, we are going to live on planet Earth, and we just have to manage them so that we can treat effectively, recover, and then we can live a long, healthy life. This is why I have been able to live 35 years free of multiple sclerosis, even though I was diagnosed with an incurable disease and I was told there was no hope for me. All right. And I'm going to go to your question. So I have a lot more here, but I'm going to go over here. Okay. All right. Hi, James. Can your treatment method help someone that has SCA3 disease? I'm not sure what that is, but all I know is that every person that I've worked with, whether it's any autoimmune, any neurodegenerative disease, and even some diseases they consider to be just hereditary they are usually caused by a disruption in our microbiome. So they are usually caused by certain microbes that are pathogenic, that are parasitic, that are becoming too populated in the body, and they're just not studying that. That's the problem. And they're not studying it. They don't have research on it. They don't have good testing. They don't have the skill to treat. And so people are just left with, we're stuck. Like nothing has changed. Like with all the diseases, it's still like since the 1950s, 60s, where everything became autoimmune disease and there were no more infectious diseases, they're not even looking, right? Dr. Alan MacDonald, it was not hard for him to go to a brain bank to get the remains of several people that had a confirmed diagnosis of MS, looked at their spinal fluid and their brains, and he said it was really quite simple to see all these worms, to see filarial worms, to see tapeworms, to see Borrelia, and then there's other, all of that was happening, you know, in the early 1900s up until the 1950s, and then everything switched. So in order for things to change, number one, we have to take charge of our health, and then we have to spread the word. We have to share this. People are becoming aware of parasites. I don't think they can stop it, but we need our practitioners to catch up. This is something that they should be doing to help us. I should not have to do this. Let's see. So, question for Pam. Are there any dangers in using parasite protocols? How is a student determined healthy even to follow the protocol? Healthy enough to follow the protocol? Any medications known that interfere? So with our students, right, number one, it's very important that they are checking with their practitioner, and even not their practitioner, but they're researching the medications that they're on. So they research to see, number one, mode of action. How is this drug working in me? And number two, what are the adverse effects of the drug that I'm taking? So sometimes we're taking medications to manage symptoms. And yes, we do want to manage the symptoms. They're usually caused by the parasites, but we want to manage them until we don't have that problem anymore. But sometimes there are safer ways that we can manage those symptoms like pain, etc. And so what our students do is they research the drugs they're on. And then if they're concerned about adverse effects, then they will definitely talk to their pharmacist and their doctor, and they'll find safer alternatives and coming off. And yes, they definitely will not just take any parasite drugs with medications that they're on, but the pharmacists are really helpful. Like the doctors might not know as well, but yes, it is very dangerous to self-medicate, and that's why I really encourage people, please don't self-medicate with parasite drugs. I know a lot of people are desperate, and I know that they're, trying all kinds of different things, like, the big craze right now is fenbendazole and ivermectin, and they're using animal, and they're using paste, and they don't know the dosages, and they can make themselves very sick. They can have terrible negative interactions. So please work with somebody. It's so important. Things like diet you can do, you will notice a significant improvement. And then when you're having daily bowel movements and you're sleeping well and you're following a low carb diet, which we give you for free, then you can bring things in like the raw garlic. You can start playing around with that, take breaks occasionally, make sure you don't have any blood clotting issues, right, with that, because it is a blood thinner. So that's something you have to check. Always check with your doctor on everything. But things like that, so things like wormwood can be helpful, and things like garlic are really helpful, and myrrh can be helpful. But again, you have to make sure that you can take those with medications you're taking. But this is where my students, they really research the disease-modifying drugs they're on. They see all the evidence that MS is an infectious disease, and they come to a point where they make the decision, not me, with their doctor, that they want to come off of the disease-modifying drugs because they've taken it for a long time. They're concerned about the adverse effects. They know that it's just suppressing their immune system, and they decide to do that. And so then they talk with their doctor and their pharmacist the safest way to come off of it. And it has nothing to do with me because I'm not a doctor. But yes, you do have to be really careful. One thing I've noticed is that the fungal medications, like there's for treating candida and mold, they interact negatively with a lot of other medications. So they're like in particular, you have to be careful with, and that's why when our students are treating fungus, they never mix the fungal medications with other parasite medications. They know that with their doctor anyhow, but it's really important for us to play an active role, to really understand what is helpful, what is not. And because sometimes things get missed, like even looking at our blood work, right? Sometimes our doctors, they might miss something like low blood iron, right? And we're just so exhausted all the time. And we're thinking it's all the parasites, where, yeah, we're dealing with parasites and they can cause low blood iron. But that's why we need to play that active role in every step of our recovery. And that's what I teach you in the Live Disease-Free plan. So yes, very good point. S18TX, tall cedars. My keyboard volume is at maximum and the microphone is at maximum. I apologize. It's as loud as I can put it. I'm sorry about that. I'll look into it. I was talking louder and my mic is as loud as possible. My keyboard is as loud as possible. So I don't know how else to increase the volume. Maybe make sure your keyboard volume is up high too. Fluke is Fluke, and a lot of times it's called schistosoma, SCH, and the rest is kind of how it sounds, schistosoma. And those would be flukes. And there are many different types of flukes. They're big, they're small. I just found last week that there are specific flukes that will infect our pancreas also. So I don't believe they're just average blood flukes, but they are specific flukes that will infect our pancreas. Some will infect our liver. They're different sizes. They're different, like with every living thing in this planet, they have a genus and a species. So it's like that's how they can tell different types of, they're like cousins, right? So some of them are really big and some of them are smaller and some live more in certain countries. So there are some that live in our liver. There are some that live in the intestine. There are some that live in the blood that will infect our kidneys and our bladder. Maybe it's our bladder, but they cause the bladder urgency. Schistosomiasis causes a lot of bladder issues. So there's many different types of flukes. So Sasha, what I would encourage you to do is I would encourage you to just give it another try, because there's not a single person that, like, sometimes it takes us time, like we have to implement a little better. Sometimes it's things in our environment. So let's say if we have a lot of mold in our environment, then we're not going to recover very well. If we have, let's say, a lot of wireless radiation in our environment, maybe we live close to a cell tower, maybe we have the transmitters of the 5G outside. I shouldn't even say these things, I'll probably get censored. But all of these things really impact the activity level of the parasites. I've had students where, they check their home for mold, and then maybe a month or two into the program, they're like, oh my gosh, we just realized that we have a leak in our roof, and like the back of my closet is wet and there's mold in it, and it's cost us several $1,000s to fix our home. So that kind of a thing can really impact our recovery. So things like a lot of mold and a lot of wireless radiation. Also, for most people, is that their carbs are still a little bit too high. We are not going to notice the same improvements, and your carbs might be low, but they could still be just a little bit too high. So that is an issue too. And it can be things like sugar and bacon. It could be a little bit of honey and ham that the average person doesn't even know that it's there. But if you have that regularly, or too much meat, your body can actually convert meat to glucose. So if you're eating a lot of meat at one sitting, it can make your blood sugar go up and it'll feed the infections, and then you will find that you just don't improve. So this is why the diet is super important. And if you're following it properly, there's not a single person that hasn't had improvements, unless there's like mold or radiation, like huge amounts, or maybe huge stress where they're not sleeping. Like if you're really sleep deprived, I had one student that her son was almost killed in an accident as soon as she joined the program. So she spent the entire time in the hospital. But the neat thing is that, like by his side, but the neat thing is that she didn't have any MS attacks because she was able to make some adjustments in her diet and things like that to make sure this parasites did not get any worse. All right. So liver flukes are terribly nasty. And it's not good. We don't want to boost the immune system. So like when we have a parasitic infestation, then when you look at your blood work, you'll notice that your white blood count is usually lower. You can notice that your lymphocytes are a little bit lower, like not dangerously low, but low normal or just below normal. And that's a sign that our immune system is chronically fighting infections. So there are certain supplements that we can use that will support the immune system, but we don't necessarily want to boost the immune system. We want to take away the pressure. We want to help to treat the parasites. We want to give the immune system a lot of nutrition. We want to use binders to decrease the toxins from the parasites. And then there are certain things like glyconutrients that can support cellular communication. But boosting the immune system is not, and things like Epstein-Barr virus, I have done a talk on that. If any of you are interested, you can go and you can look at the research. The research is very weak that those of us with MS, that it's caused by Epstein-Barr. They do want to make a vaccine for that. Yes, they do. But when you look at actually the very small, they're like, we took this huge study of thousands of people, and then by the time the actual people that were studied, I think it was like 30 or 35 people that were studied. And the problem with Epstein-Barr is that I think it's at least 95% of everybody, the general population, has been exposed to Epstein-Barr virus. So then if it was the cause of MS, then wouldn't we have a lot more multiple sclerosis? Yes, but we don't. So can viruses become more active when we are infested with other parasites? Yes, they can. And also, can we have more Borrelia symptoms if we have a lot of larger worms? Yes, we can. Why is it that a lot of people that, let's say, have been bitten by ticks or mosquitoes and have been infected by Lyme don't show Lyme symptoms? Because their microbiome is in balance better than ours when we end up getting Lyme symptoms. So the bigger parasites definitely cause the problem. So some of the hero doctors I've studied under, they say that most people have been exposed to Lyme. It comes through any biting insect. That includes mosquitoes. So have you been bitten by a mosquito? Chances are you have been bitten or you've received these Borrelia and co-infections. And it's the state of our microbiome, the state of our immune system, that determines whether we are going to have that as an infection or not. So, John, you were diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2004. You chose not to do the traditional way with modern medicine. Instead, you've been on LDN and CBD oil. So if it's CBD without THC, it's fine. It helps to support decreased inflammation. But CBD, if you want to look into, not CBD, the THC, if you want to look into, I've done a talk on that. You can just do, marijuana and MS. Is it helpful? Or just live disease-free in marijuana. Look for that. There are so many studies that show that it really impacts our brain function, impacts our mood. It's been linked, like regular use of it over years has been linked with increased depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. And we want a healthy brain, so that's why I don't recommend it. But CBD without the THC is fine, where it's negligible and we do not have any hallucinogenic properties, that's fine. But the problem is that if you just use LDN and CBD, you are living with these parasites and they're living in your body, and over time they keep reproducing And unless you're treating them, they don't leave your body. And there will come a time where we go through stressful periods and we do get a relapse because their population is higher. And as we get older, right, our immune system is not as strong, like our body is not as strong. So that's why it is so wise to learn how to manage parasites on your own. What are your thoughts of the IVIG therapy to boost the immune system? Again, I know one healthcare professional, we have a lot of healthcare professionals that take our program, and she is more of an integrative healthcare professional. And she was doing that, just trying to help manage the symptoms she was dealing with. And she passed so many huge roundworms. It's those kind of things are not, again, like to boost the immune system when it's kind of like your soldiers. If your soldiers are exhausted, they're fighting a losing battle, and then you're prodding them and you're like giving them caffeine and you're like, go, go, go harder. Like, why not start to take some of the pressure off of your soldiers, off of your immune cells, right? You don't need to boost your immune cell. I believe that our bodies are divinely created. I believe that our immune system and how our body is functioning, like, we don't totally understand. It's so complex. And so for us to be so arrogant that like we know better than the immune system, I think is foolish. And I think that if we can use nutrition to help support, if we can use lifestyle to help support, if we can help to decrease some of these disease-causing parasites, your immune system just goes back to working the way it is genetically programmed to do. And I know that all of these therapies, they are super expensive and there's always new ones and we've got to keep using them. And that's why we have a multi-trillion-dollar healthcare industry. If our doctors would treat parasites early on, we would not have chronic disease or minimal. Like, most people could catch it early when maybe you're not sleeping well at night. Maybe you are having gut issues, you're having gas or constipation or diarrhea, maybe a little bit of brain fog, and you might wake up throughout the night. Just things like that. If they would treat back then, or maybe we had to go on antibiotics, and even that is like, okay, if you're getting secondary bacterial infections, it means that your immune system is suffering, and it means that your microbiome is out of balance and you need to restore balance. So when you may have to use an antibiotic to get you out of crisis, then treat the other parasites and also rebuild the good, healthy microbes, and then you stay out of disease. That is the key. So how does this work with peptides? We're not worried about peptides. So peptides are the smallest part of proteins. I'm not sure if you're talking about the IVIG, but antibodies are proteins. There's lots of things that are proteins. I'm not sure what you're relating to. You're trying to find radiology images of the chest showing evidence of lung flukes. Reason, I think I figured out that the flukes are a certain species anyway. Does it look like peptides? I'm not sure how flukes would look on MRIs. Like a fluke would be not a fluke, an X-ray. An MRI like a fluke would be way too big, right? So what we do, like if you feel you could possibly have flukes, this is where you look, number one, I don't know which fluke it is, which life cycle, but there are other worms that can affect the lungs too. And so this is where it's good to be energy tested by an integrative practitioner that can take the parasite drugs and say, yes, this one tests well, no, not that one, yes, this one, no, not that one. And then you'll see a pattern. If you test well for several parasite drugs that treat roundworms, then you probably have roundworms. If you test well for several parasite drugs that treat flatworms, then you probably have flukes. So, and also what you're passing, if you're doing the oxidizing enemas and you're passing different worms, that also helps to determine what types of parasites you're dealing with. So how we help our students and practitioners to to build a game plan is looking at a student's health history, the health history of their parents, their symptoms, because there are specific symptoms for different types of infections, their diagnosis, their energy test results, and what types of parasites they are passing. So I'm telling you all this because it's something you can share with your practitioner. I'm telling you all this because if a practitioner is listening to this talk that I'm doing, those are really valuable criteria because we do not have good stool tests. We do not have good DNA tests. You can have your patient do those tests, but they'll spend $1,000 and you're not going to know what parasites they're dealing with. They're not accurate, unfortunately. Okay, I'm going to do 2 more and then I'm going to quit because we've already gone an hour. All right, let's see. Oh, good. Some people are not having a problem hearing me at all. Yay, that's awesome. And what seems to be the best parasite drug for intestinal flukes? Intestinal flukes are really tough to get rid of. Sore roundworm, sore tapeworm. So it's all the steps in the plan. And herbs to hit the young ones. So look up myrrh. I know that in some countries they have a medication that's like concentrated extract from myrrh that will treat more of the larva. And then also there are certain drugs like the main one for flukes is praziquantel, but it's not going to get rid of all your flukes. So we're using, and this is where you talk with your doctor, there's different concentrations of using praziquantel. There's different combinations, so albendazole can be helpful. And also, this is all in the scientific research, so albendazole, it's not something I'm coming up with, it's what we're finding and what we're seeing in the research. That's fungus. Praziquantel, albendazole, I'm trying to think, triclabendazole, but that's more for liver flukes, but it could potentially be helpful for intestinal flukes. And then pyrantel palmate is another one that is really helpful. And so like our students are using, like they're getting energy tested as to what they test well for, and they never just take a bunch of parasite drugs together. They're doing it very systematically when they're ready, when they're feeling better, right, and building things up. But there is definitely a better killing effect when you're using multiple treatments at the same time. And know that flukes, intestinal flukes, they can live for different flukes can live for 20 to 30 years inside of us. The lifespan of a fluke, not their families, but the lifespan of a fluke can be 25 to 30 years. They can produce 25 to 200,000 eggs per day, like for an adult fluke. So this is why they are so challenging to treat. And then you're dealing with the surface area of a double tennis court, right? Because a lot of them are going to live in the small intestine, and some of them will make their way down to the large intestine. And some of the flukes will get caught up in the liver gallbladder area. So, and some will live in the liver, so this is why it does take, don't wing it, don't mess around with medications, work with a practitioner, learn how to treat, and this is where, our next phase with our team is we really want to really reach as many practitioners as possible with our 10 years of experience and wisdom and knowledge, because every single practitioner can help hundreds of people, and not just when they're dealing with chronic disease, but before they're diagnosed with chronic disease, right? But they have to also educate their patients to say, it's not normal to have brain fog. It's not normal to wake up all throughout the night. It's not normal to have constipation, diarrhea, or gas and bloating and mood swings and PMS symptoms and all of these different, it's not normal. It's a disruption in your microbiome, and let me help you to correct it when it's simple, before we have hundreds and hundreds of worms living inside of us. So Christopher, you said, I wish I knew a doctor who would have this conversation. I did create a resource page for you. It's how to talk to your doctor about parasites. Just look at Live Disease Free, how to talk to your doctor about parasites. I made a 1-page PDF that you can print off and you can talk to them. But the key is that just go next, next, next. If your doctor won't, you can tell very quickly with just a couple of questions if they're open or not. Like some doctors are like, I don't know much about it. I'm willing to support you. If it's safe, that's the kind of doctor that will be great to work with. But then you still need to learn, and that's what we can help you with in the program, is to learn what you need. But that is the key, is just to find somebody who's like, I'm hearing more about parasites. I really don't know. I don't have a lot of experience treating them, but as long as I feel that it's safe, I'm willing to support you. That is a wonderful doctor, right? And that's what you're looking for. All right. Oh, okay, so the volume was not directed at me. It was directed at somebody else. Okay, perfect. Okay, awesome. Okay, I'm going to let you guys go. We have gone on long enough. So if you enjoy what I share, please like, share, and subscribe. Let's get more people talking about parasites. Let's get more people talking to their doctors about parasites. They can't avoid it. It's inevitable that they're going to have to circle around and start treating parasites, and we will want to be part of the small part that's helping them with whatever we can. Number two, if this is new to you and you're like, what, parasites? And a lot of people have never heard this before, make sure to go to livediseasefree.com and look at our blog. We have posts every week where I'm sharing research and I'm sharing parasite pictures and I'm sharing all of that. And also start the diet. Go at the top of the main page of Live Disease Free, research, in the main menu, research, the Live Disease Free diet guidelines. Start to lower your carbs. It will change your life, I promise you. And then if you get to the point where you're looking for a practitioner to help you and you can't find somebody that has experience and you need a proven plan, you need a step-by-step plan, then reach out and watch my masterclass training. That will also tell you all the steps we take in more detail, the research steps, successes. And then if you want to work with me, make sure to fill out the form and you can chat with me and we'll see if it's a good fit for you. So with that, I hope you have a wonderful week and we will talk to you next week. Take care and bye-bye for now.